The cantina on Epsilon Station was dark and smelled of alien drinks and smoke. Commander Vextal sat in the corner booth, his forearms shaking as he held his glass. The blue liquid inside moved like waves every time his hands trembled. His scaled skin showed old burn marks from weapons that had nearly killed him 3 years ago. Hyun-Woo Park walked into the cantina carrying his recording equipment. He was a news writer who had covered wars on 17 different planets. He had seen many soldiers broken by battle. But something about this alien seemed different, more afraid, more haunted. "You are the reporter?" Vextal asked in broken human language. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "Yes. You said you had stories about the war with humans." Hyun-Woo sat down across from the alien. He placed a small device on the table between them. "May I record this?" Vextal stared at the device for a long time. Then he reached into his uniform and pulled out a small bag of credits. "This is what you asked for. Now you must promise me something." "What?" "Promise you will tell other species what really happened. Promise you will warn them about humans." The alien's 4 eyes all focused on Hyun-Woo. "They need to know the truth." Hyun-Woo nodded and turned on the recorder. "Tell me your story." Vextal drank more of the blue liquid. It seemed to calm his shaking hands. "I was a commander in the Altarian Defense Force. My unit was the best. 200 elite shock troops. We had won battles on 50 worlds. We never lost a single fight. Until you met humans. Until we met humans." Vextal's eyes became distant. "The High Command sent us to a mining planet called Kepler 442b. It had thorium deposits worth billions of credits. Intelligence reports said there were maybe 50 human miners there. Civilians with old weapons." Hyun-Woo leaned forward. "What did you find instead?" "We found Sergeant Major Bo-Ram Kim." Vextal said the name like it was a curse. She had 63 Marines with her. "When our ships landed, we expected the humans to run or surrender. Instead, they were waiting for us." The alien took another drink. His hands were shaking again. The planet had mountains everywhere. Narrow passes between the peaks. Perfect for defense if you knew how to use them. And humans knew how to use them. What happened in the first battle? It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Vextal closed all 4 of his eyes. "We marched into the main pass in formation. Standard assault formation. It had worked on every world we had conquered. Our armor was strong. Our weapons were advanced. We had air support and heavy tanks. But Sergeant Kim had studied us. She knew exactly how we would attack. The humans had set traps everywhere. Explosive charges hidden in the rocks. Snipers in caves we could not see. When we entered the pass, they collapsed the entrance and the exit. We were trapped." Hyun-Woo watched the alien commander relive the memory. Vextal's breathing became faster and his scales changed color from green to a pale yellow. "They did not attack us all at once," Vextal continued. "That would have been normal. Instead, they picked us apart slowly. 1 soldier would die. Then another. Then 5 more. We never saw where the shots came from. Our scanners could not find them. It was like fighting ghosts." "How long did this go on?" 6 hours. 6 hours of watching my soldiers die one by one. Every time we tried to advance, more explosives would detonate. Every time we tried to retreat, sniper fire would cut down the ones in back. And through it all, we could hear them talking. The humans were talking during the battle, on open radio channels. They wanted us to hear them." Vextal's voice became quieter. Sergeant Kim was giving orders like she was teaching a training class. "Alpha Team, take the targets on the left ridge. Bravo Team, wait for my signal before you detonate the charges." She sounded so calm, so professional. Hyun-Woo made notes while the alien talked. What was the worst part? The worst part was when they started laughing. All of Vextal's eyes opened wide. "After 4 hours of battle, when half my unit was dead, one of the human snipers started laughing over the radio. A young voice, probably just a boy. He was laughing because he had just killed 3 of my best soldiers with 1 shot. That disturbed you?" "It terrified me. In all our wars with other species, soldiers were serious during battle. They were afraid or angry or determined. But humans were enjoying it. They were having fun while they killed us." Vextal finished his drink and signaled for another. The bartender, a 6-armed creature from the Vega system, quickly brought another glass of blue liquid. When the battle finally ended, only 7 of us were still alive. 7 out of 200. The alien's voice was barely a whisper now. We surrendered, expecting to be executed or tortured. That is what we would have done to human prisoners. But they didn't. Sergeant Kim walked into the pass with 2 Marines. She was smaller than any of my soldiers, maybe half the height of an Altarian warrior. But when she looked at us, I saw something in her eyes that made me understand why we had lost. What did you see? Disappointment. She was not angry or proud or excited about winning. She looked disappointed that we had not fought better. Like a teacher who expected more from her students. Hyunwoo stopped writing. Disappointed? She spoke to us in perfect Altarian language. Better than most Altarians speak it. She said, "You fought like amateurs. Your tactics were outdated. Your formation was predictable. If this is the best the Galactic Coalition can send, this war will be over in 6 months. What happened to the survivors?" She had her medics treat our wounds, fed us from their own supplies. Then she gave us a message to take back to our commanders. Bextal's scales turned darker. She said to tell them that this was just one small unit on one unimportant planet. She said if the Coalition wanted a real war, humans would give them one. And you delivered the message? I delivered it. But no one believed me. The High Command said I was suffering from battle shock. They said humans were primitive and could never defeat advanced alien military forces. They sent larger armies to other human worlds. With the same result? With worse results. Much worse. Bextal finished his second drink. The stories I am about to tell you, they will sound impossible, but I swear by my ancestors' names that every word is true. Humans did things in that war that still give me nightmares. They showed us capabilities we never imagined any species could possess. Hyunwoo looked at his recorder to make sure it was still working. I'm ready to hear those stories. Then prepare yourself, human reporter. You are about to learn why every alien veteran of the human war wakes up screaming at night. You are about to learn what your species is truly capable of when they decide to wage war. The cantina seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the other patrons could sense the dark tales that were about to be told. Vextal ordered his third drink before continuing. The blue liquid seemed to be the only thing that stopped his hands from shaking. Hyunwoo waited patiently, knowing that rushing the alien would only make him stop talking. After the defeat, on Kepler 442b, the Coalition decided to send the Zephyrians. Vextal finally said, "Do you know about Zephyrians?" Hyunwoo shook his head. "Tell me." "They are the best hunters in the galaxy. 7 feet tall, with natural camouflage that makes them nearly invisible. They can move without making any sound. Their eyes can see heat signatures from 3 miles away. They have been the apex predators on every battlefield for over 200 years. But humans found a way to fight them. One human found a way to fight them. Private First Class Donghyun Lee. Vextal spoke the name with a mixture of fear and respect. The Zephyrians called him the Ghost of Titan 7. Why Titan 7? Because that was where he made his stand. A mining station on Saturn's largest moon. The Coalition sent an entire Zephyrian assault battalion to take the facility. 800 of their best warriors, equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in the galaxy. Vextal paused to drink. His alien features showed an expression that might have been admiration. Lee was alone. One human soldier with standard marine equipment. The tactical computers calculated that the battle would last maybe 2 hours. How long did it actually last? 18 standard days. Hyunwoo looked up from his notes. One soldier held off 800 aliens for 18 days. Not just held them off. He hunted them. Vextal's voice became quieter. I was serving as an observer with the Zephyrian command. I watched the whole thing through their tactical displays. I have never seen anything like it. What made this human different? He understood them better than they understood themselves. On the first day, the Zephyrians used their standard infiltration tactics. They became invisible and tried to surround the human's position. But somehow Lee knew exactly where they were. Vextal activated a small holographic display that showed a map of the mining facility. The station had dozens of buildings connected by underground tunnels. Perfect terrain for stealth operations. The Zephyrians should have been able to move anywhere without being detected. But Lee could track them. He could predict them. Every time a Zephyrian squad tried to flank his position, they would find explosive traps waiting for them. Every time they tried to use their camouflage to get close, sniper fire would pick them off from impossible angles. The alien manipulated the holographic display, showing the positions of various battles. But the really frightening part began on the third day. That was when Lee started leaving gifts. Gifts? Personal items taken from dead Zephyrian soldiers, family photos, letters from home, religious symbols, but not just random items. Specific things that meant something to each individual warrior. Hyun-woo frowned. How could he know what was meaningful to them? That is what terrified the Zephyrians. Lee would break into their temporary camps at night while they slept. He would take one personal item from each soldier's equipment, but he would also leave something behind. What would he leave? Photos of their families that he had somehow obtained. Pictures of their wives, their children, their parents. But these were not photos from the soldiers' personal collections. These were new photos, taken recently on the Zephyrian homeworlds. Vextal's scales turned pale yellow again. The photos came with handwritten notes in perfect Zephyrian script. The notes said things like, "I know where they live. I could visit them while you are here fighting me. But I will not because I am not a monster. Next time I visit your camp, I might change my mind." He was threatening their families? No. That was what made it so disturbing. He was showing them that he could threaten their families, but choosing not to. He was demonstrating mercy as a form of psychological warfare. Hyun-woo wrote quickly, trying to capture every detail. How did the Zephyrians react? At first they became more aggressive. They thought anger would overcome their fear. But Lee adapted to their new tactics immediately. When they charged his positions in rage, they ran into carefully planned killing zones. When they tried to use their superior numbers, they found that the narrow passages of the mining station turned their advantage into a disadvantage. And the gifts continued. They got more personal. By the second week, Lee was leaving items that only family members should have known about. A toy from a warrior's childhood, a piece of jewelry that belonged to a grandfather, poems written by beloved partners. Vextal drank again, his 4 hands all trembling slightly. The Zephyrian commander started having his troops searched every morning. Anyone found with an unauthorized item was executed immediately. But this only made the situation worse. Why? Because the executions were broadcast on open channels, and Lee was listening. He began to comment on each execution. He would say things like, "Talvar had 3 children. Now they will grow up without a father, because you are too afraid to trust your own soldiers." Or, "Zekmon was only trying to keep a picture of his mate. You killed him for loving someone." The alien's voice became even quieter. By the 10th day, the Zephyrians were afraid to sleep. They knew Lee was visiting their camps every night, but they could never catch him. Their own stealth technology seemed useless against him. How was he getting past their sensors? We never found out. Some of the survivors think he had studied Zephyrian technology and learned to mimic their camouflage signatures. Others believe he was using the mining station's tunnel system to move undetected. But I think the truth was simpler. What do you think? I think he was better at being a hunter than the best hunters in the galaxy. He understood patience in a way that no other species does. He could wait for hours without moving, watching for the perfect moment to strike. Vextal manipulated the holographic display again, showing casualty reports. By the end of the second week, the Zephyrians had lost over 300 warriors. Their morale was completely broken. Some squads were refusing to go on patrol. Others were deserting entirely. But the worst was yet to come. The worst was the music. On the 15th day, Lee hacked into their communication system and began playing human songs during firefights. Songs, children's lullabies, soft, gentle music about love and peace and hope. But he played them while plasma fire was exploding around the Zephyrian positions. The contrast between the beautiful music and the violence was disturbing. Vextal closed all 4 of his eyes. Imagine trying to fight for your life while a human child sings about sunshine and flowers in your ears. Imagine hearing a mother's voice humming a gentle tune while your friends die around you. It sounds like psychological torture. It was. But the most effective kind. Lee was not just killing Zephyrian soldiers. He was making them question why they were fighting. He was reminding them of everything beautiful they had left behind to come to this frozen moon. How did it end? On the 18th day, the Zephyrian commander received orders to use orbital bombardment. They were told to destroy the entire mining facility rather than continue losing soldiers to one human. Did they kill him? They tried. They fired plasma cannons from their ships for 6 hours straight. They turned the mining station into molten metal and glass. When the bombardment stopped, they sent in the survivors to confirm the kill. Vextal finished his third drink and sat in silence for a moment. They found Lee's position, a reinforced bunker deep underground. It had been completely destroyed by the orbital strike. So he was dead? His body was never found, but in the center of the bunker, they discovered a recording device that had survived the bombardment. It was playing a message on infinite loop. What did the message say? It was Lee's voice laughing, just laughing for 30 seconds. But at the end he said, "Tell your commanders that this was just one Marine on one unimportant moon. If they want to see what humans can really do, they should try attacking Earth." Vextal signaled for another drink. 800 Zephyrians went to Titan 7. Less than 50 returned alive. Those who survived were never the same. Most of them retired from military service immediately. Some had to be treated for severe psychological trauma. And this was just one human soldier? Just one. And according to human military records, Donghyun Lee was not even considered exceptional by their standards. He was just a regular Marine doing his job. Yan Wu stared at his recorder, making sure it was still capturing everything. What lesson did the Coalition learn from Titan 7? The wrong lesson. Instead of reconsidering the war, they decided that humans were too dangerous to be allowed to live. They began planning for total extermination of your species. Which led to more battles? Which led to horrors that make the ghost of Titan 7 look like a gentle introduction to human warfare capabilities. The stories I will tell you next. They will explain why the Coalition ultimately begged for peace. Led by a human expert who knew exactly how to exploit the greatest weakness of your species. What weakness? Your capacity for empathy. Your inability to ignore. Vextal stared at his drink for a long time before continuing. His four hands were steady now, but his scales had turned a sickly pale color that Yanwu had not seen before. The Coalition's final strategy, he said quietly, was psychological warfare. They decided that since they could not break human bodies, they would break human minds. How did they plan to do that? By targeting the one thing that makes humans different from every other species in the galaxy. Your capacity to care about others, even your enemies. Vextal activated his holographic display one last time, showing deployment charts and battle maps. The operation was called Heartbreak. It was led by a human who had defected to the Coalition early in the war. A human was working against his own species? Commander So Young-han. She had been captured during the first year of fighting and had supposedly been converted to the Coalition cause through advanced psychological conditioning. The Coalition leadership believed she understood human weaknesses better than any alien could. What was her mission? To command a specialized unit that would make human soldiers want to stop fighting. Not by defeating them in battle, but by making them question why they were fighting at all. Yanwu leaned forward. How does psychological warfare work against humans? Commander Han studied human psychology for months before beginning her campaign. She identified what she called the empathy vulnerability. The human inability to ignore emotional connections with other people. I don't understand. During the siege of Arcturus base, Han's team intercepted personal communications between Coalition soldiers and their families back home. Letters, video messages, voice recordings, normal intelligence gathering. Vextal's voice became quieter, but instead of using this information for tactical advantage, Han began responding to these messages. Her team impersonated family members and sent replies to alien soldiers. They were pretending to be alien family members? Perfectly. Han's team included human linguists who could speak dozens of alien languages flawlessly. They studied cultural patterns, family traditions, and personal relationships until they could imitate anyone. What did these fake messages say? They expressed love and concern. They talked about missing the soldiers and wanting them to come home safely. They questioned whether the war was really necessary, and whether victory was worth the cost. The alien's scales darkened as he remembered. I received one of these messages during the siege. It appeared to come from my primary mate on Altair. The message was in perfect Altarian script using phrases that only my family would know. What did the message say? It said that our offspring was sick and needed me to return home. It included a small holographic sculpture that looked like something my child would have made. The message begged me to abandon the war and come back to take care of my family. But it was fake. Completely fake. But it was so perfectly crafted that I believed it completely. I nearly deserted my post to try to return to Altair. Only later did I learn that my real family had been evacuated to a refugee camp months earlier. Vexital finished his drink and ordered another. But Han's psychological campaign went much deeper than fake messages. She began smuggling care packages into alien military camps. Care packages? Boxes containing personal items, food, and letters. Each package was tailored to a specific soldier based on detailed psychological profiles. The items inside were things that would trigger powerful emotional responses. What kind of items? For Zephyrian soldiers, packages contained hunting trophies from their homeworlds. Trophies they had supposedly earned as children. For chromatic warriors, there were religious artifacts that matched their personal spiritual beliefs. For Altarian troops like me, there were family photos and genetic art. All fake, all perfectly crafted forgeries, but they felt completely real to the soldiers who received them. Each package came with a letter written in the soldier's native language, supposedly from a family member, expressing love and asking them to come home safely. Hyunwoo wrote quickly, trying to capture all the details. How effective was this campaign? Within weeks, entire battalions were abandoning their posts. Soldiers would receive a package and immediately apply for leave to visit their families. When leave was denied, many would simply desert. The emotional manipulation was that powerful? It was not manipulation. That is what made it so effective. Commander Han understood that the messages and packages contained real emotions: love, concern, hope, fear. The only thing that was fake was the source. Vextal's new drink arrived, but he ignored it. Some alien commanders tried to stop the packages by executing any soldier found with suspicious items. But this only made the psychological campaign more effective. Why? Because Han was monitoring coalition communications. Every time a commander executed a soldier for receiving a care package, she would broadcast commentary about the execution on all frequencies. What kind of commentary? She would give biographical information about the executed soldier. His name, his family, his hopes and dreams. She would describe how the care package had reminded him of home and made him realize what he was fighting for. And then she would ask other coalition soldiers to consider whether their commanders valued alien lives more than they valued winning the war. She would suggest that maybe the real enemy was not humanity, but the leaders who were willing to kill their own troops to maintain discipline. The alien's voice became strained. The most effective broadcast came after a chromatic general executed 12 soldiers who had received packages. Han spent an hour describing each soldier's family, their traditions, their contributions to chromatic society. What was her conclusion? She said, "These 12 soldiers died because they remembered that they were fighting for something beautiful, their families, their culture, their way of life. Their general killed them because he forgot that wars should protect beautiful things, not destroy them." Vextal finally picked up his drink, but his 4 hands were shaking again. After that broadcast, the general's own officers mutinied. They arrested him and began negotiating with human forces for a local ceasefire. The psychological warfare was turning the coalition against itself, completely. But Han's masterpiece came during the final phase of her campaign. She began broadcasting intercepted alien poetry, music, and art during battle lulls. Entertainment, cultural treasures, the most beautiful expressions of each species' civilization, Zephyrian hunt songs that had been passed down for generations, chromatic religious chants that spoke of peace and understanding, Altarian mathematical poetry that described the harmony of the universe. Why would that be effective? Because it reminded coalition soldiers what they were supposedly fighting to preserve. When you hear the most beautiful music your people have ever created, when you remember the poetry that defines your culture's highest aspirations, it becomes very difficult to continue actions that could destroy those things. Vextal drank deeply, but the most disturbing part was how Han chose which pieces to broadcast. How did she choose? By studying the personal files of individual soldiers and selecting art that would have specific meaning for each person. A Zephyrian would hear the lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child. A chromatic would hear the wedding song from his bonding ceremony. An Altarian would hear the mathematical proof that had inspired him to become a soldier. She was targeting their deepest personal connections. She was reminding them of who they were before they became soldiers. She was showing them that humanity understood and appreciated their cultures, their traditions, their values. And that made them stop fighting. It made them question why they were fighting. When the enemy demonstrates a deep appreciation for everything you hold sacred, it becomes very difficult to see them as monsters who need to be destroyed. Vextal's scales had turned almost completely white. The final broadcast was Han's personal message to all coalition forces. She spoke in perfect versions of 17 different alien languages, addressing each species individually. What did she say? She thanked them for sharing their cultures with humanity. She expressed genuine appreciation for alien art, music, poetry, and philosophy. She said that humans had learned more about beauty and truth from studying alien civilizations than from any other source. And then she made an offer. She said that humanity wanted to end the war not through victory, but through understanding. She invited coalition soldiers to lay down their weapons and join humans in building something better than any empire. A community where all species could contribute their unique gifts. Did they accept? By the thousands, entire fleets began defecting to human-controlled space, not as prisoners or converts, but as partners in building Han's vision of interspecies cooperation. Vextal finished his drink and sat in silence for a moment. Within 6 months, the coalition's military forces had been reduced by 60% through defections, desertions, and refusals to fight. So Han's psychological warfare ended the war? It ended the war, but not in the way anyone expected. Coalition leadership realized that continuing to fight would only result in the complete collapse of their military structure. The cantina was getting busier as the station's evening cycle began, but Vextal seemed not to notice the other patrons. His fourth drink sat untouched as he stared at something only he could see. The siege of New Busan, he said suddenly. That was where we learned that killing humans was not the same as defeating them. Yanwu adjusted his recorder. Tell me about New Busan. It was the last human stronghold in the Proxima sector. After the coalition decided on total extermination, we sent 200 ships to surround the planet. The plan was simple. Blockade all supply lines, bomb military targets, and wait for surrender. How long did you expect it to take? 3 weeks, maybe 4. Standard galactic warfare protocols show that civilian populations surrender when faced with starvation and constant bombardment. Every species in the galaxy follows these patterns. Vextal finally picked up his drink, but just held it without sipping. New Busan had 12 million people. About half were civilians. The military commander was Colonel Jin A. Choi, a veteran of the Mars campaigns. Intelligence reports suggested she was competent but not exceptional. What happened during the first weeks? Exactly what we expected. Our orbital bombardment destroyed military bases, spaceports, and communication centers. We cut off all supply ships. Within 2 weeks, the planet was completely isolated. The alien scales shifted color as he remembered. Then we sent surrender demands. Standard terms. Immediate capitulation in exchange for prisoner of war treatment according to galactic conventions. We expected acceptance within hours. But Colonel Choi refused. She did not just refuse. She broadcast her response on all frequencies so every ship in our fleet could hear it. Vextal's voice became quieter. She said, "We reject your surrender terms. We reject your authority over human worlds. If you want New Busan, come and take it." That sounds like normal military defiance, and that was what we thought. But then she said something that should have warned us about what was coming. She said, "We have voted. Every adult citizen of this planet has voted. We choose to fight until death rather than live as prisoners." Hyun-woo looked up from his notes. They voted to fight to the death? 12 million people. The vote was recorded and verified by neutral observers. 11,700,000 voted to fight. 300,000 voted to surrender. Of those 300,000, 200,000 changed their votes after the results were announced. They chose death over surrender. They chose freedom over survival. And that was when we began to understand that humans think differently than every other species in the galaxy. Vextal finally drank, draining half the glass in one gulp. The siege continued. We bombed their cities. We destroyed their factories. We cut off their power grids. After 6 months, our sensors showed massive starvation and disease throughout the planet. But they still wouldn't surrender. They began what they called Operation Eternal Defiance. Using materials from destroyed buildings, they built underground cities. Children operated communication networks while elderly civilians manufactured weapons in hidden workshops. Children? Human children as young as 12 were running supply lines through tunnel systems that spanned entire continents. When we discovered these tunnels and tried to flood them or gas them, we found that the humans had planned for this too. Vexatal activated another holographic display showing underground maps. They had built air filtration systems using civilian technology, water pumps powered by bicycle generators, food production facilities growing mushrooms and insects in the darkness. They were preparing for a long siege. They were preparing to fight forever. But the most disturbing discovery came when our intelligence teams analyzed intercepted human communications. What did you find? The humans were not just surviving underground. They were thriving. Children were still going to school. Adults were getting married and having babies. Artists were creating music and poetry about the siege. Vextal's four eyes all focused on Hyunwoo. Do you understand what this means? While their planet was being destroyed, while they were starving and dying from disease, humans were still building a society. They were still planning for the future, as if they believed they would win, as if they believed that fighting was more important than winning, as if the act of resistance itself was worth any sacrifice. The alien manipulated the holographic display again, showing casualty reports. After 6 months, we decided on a final assault. Ground troops would land simultaneously at 50 locations and crush all remaining resistance within 72 hours. How many troops did you send? 50,000 soldiers from 12 different species. Our best warriors with our most advanced equipment. The humans had maybe 10,000 fighters left, most of them wounded or sick from the siege. You should have won easily. We should have won in the first hour. Instead, we walked into the most perfectly planned defense in military history. Vextal drank again, his hands shaking more noticeably. The humans had spent 6 months preparing for our assault. They knew exactly where we would land. They had studied our tactics from previous battles and prepared specific countermeasures for each species' combat style. They were ready for you. They were eager for us. When our dropships landed, we expected to find demoralized survivors hiding in ruins. Instead, we found Lieutenant Commander Taemin Kwan leading civilian volunteers in coordinated attacks against our landing zones. Civilians were fighting, doctors and teachers and shop owners, armed with improvised weapons made from mining equipment and farming tools. But they fought with the discipline of veteran soldiers because they had been training for this moment for months. The alien's voice became strained. And they were singing. The entire time they were singing battle hymns in perfect harmony while they charged our positions. Singing while fighting, songs about freedom and sacrifice and love of home. Thousands of voices joined together, creating music even as plasma fire erupted around them. Our soldiers had never experienced anything like it. Vextal finished his drink and immediately ordered another. The battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Every human position had to be taken by direct assault. They never retreated. They never surrendered. Even when they were wounded, they continued fighting. What was the final result? We took New Busan, but the cost was devastating. Over 30,000 humans died, including Colonel Choi and Lieutenant Commander Kwan. But they destroyed or damaged 67 coalition ships and killed 12,000 of our best troops. And the survivors? There were no survivors. Every human fighter died at their post. When we entered the final bunker, we found Colonel Choi's body at her command station. She had continued giving orders until the moment she died. Hyunwoo stopped writing. No survivors at all? None among the fighters. But we found something else in that final bunker. Something that explained why the humans had fought so desperately. What? A nursery. Hidden in the deepest part of the underground complex. Protected by the most heavily defended corridors. Inside were 3,000 human children, ranging in age from newborn infants to teenagers. Vextal's scales turned almost white. The children were healthy and well-fed. While the adult population was starving, they had made sure the children had everything they needed. The fighters had died so that the next generation could live. What happened to the children? Coalition Command ordered their execution. Standard procedure for total extermination campaigns. But something unexpected happened. What? Our soldiers refused. 12 different species, all of them professional warriors, refused to kill human children. Even after everything the humans had done to us, we could not bring ourselves to murder innocents. So the children lived? They were taken to neutral worlds and placed in refugee camps. Many were adopted by alien families. But that act of mercy had consequences that the coalition leadership did not anticipate. Hyun-woo waited for Vextal to continue. News of New Busan spread throughout the galaxy. Every species learned how humans had fought and died for their freedom. More importantly, they learned how we had spared the children. And public opinion began to turn against the war. Citizens on coalition worlds started asking why we were trying to exterminate a species that loved their children enough to die for them. Protests began on dozens of planets. Vextal's new drink arrived, but he ignored it. But the war was not over. The coalition leadership decided that if conventional warfare could not defeat humans, they would try more extreme measures. More extreme than orbital bombardment? Much more extreme. And that was when humans showed us capabilities that still give me nightmares. The next story I will tell you, it concerns a human captain who captured an entire dreadnought using nothing but a damaged frigate and the most terrifying weapon in any human's arsenal. What weapon? Their ability to learn. Their capacity to adapt to any situation and turn disadvantage into victory. You are about to hear how Captain Ju-won Park taught us that there is no such thing as impossible odds when humans decide they want to win. Vextal pushed his untouched drink away and leaned forward across the table. His 4 eyes were wide and unblinking as he prepared to tell his next story. The Battle of Wolf 359, he began. That was where the coalition learned that giving humans impossible odds only makes them more dangerous. Hyun-woo checked his recorder again. The device was nearly full but still functioning. What happened at Wolf 359? The Chromatic Empire decided to end the war quickly. They sent their most advanced warship, the Death's Edge. It was a dreadnought 3 kilometers long, with crew of 50,000 and weapons that could destroy an entire planet. Against how many human ships? 1. A human frigate called the Soul's Pride, commanded by Captain Ju-won Park. The frigate was already damaged from a previous battle. Half its weapons were offline. Its crew was down to 137 people. Vextal activated his holographic display showing the 2 ships. The size difference was enormous. The human frigate looked like a tiny insect next to the massive alien dreadnought. The chromatic computers calculated the odds. Their ship had superior shields, superior weapons, superior numbers. The tactical analysis showed a 97.3% probability of victory within the first 15 minutes of battle. What did Captain Park do? Something that no chromatic tactical computer could predict. Instead of trying to fight the dreadnought with conventional weapons, he rammed his ship directly into its hull. Hyun-woo looked up from his notes. He crashed his own ship? Not exactly. At the last moment before impact, Park ejected all of his crew in escape pods. The chromatics thought the humans were abandoning their ship in fear. They prepared to capture the pods and interrogate the survivors. But that wasn't the plan. Each pod contained a full boarding team with cutting torches, magnetic charges, and portable equipment. While the chromatics were focused on the frigate embedded in their hull, 137 humans were already cutting their way into the dreadnought's maintenance sections. Vextal manipulated the display to show the internal layout of the chromatic ship. The Death's Edge had been designed to fight other capital ships. Its defenses were built to stop external attacks, not small teams infiltrating through service corridors. So the humans got inside. They got inside and disappeared. Within minutes, human boarding teams were moving through ventilation shafts, maintenance tunnels, and cargo bays. The ship's internal sensors could not track them because they were too small and moving too quickly. What did they do once they were inside? They began to study. While chromatic security teams searched for them, the humans were analyzing every piece of technology they encountered. They took apart weapon systems, shield generators, and computer terminals. Vextal's scales shifted to a darker color, but here is what made it truly frightening. They were learning in real time. The first human team to encounter a chromatic plasma rifle spent 30 minutes studying it. The second team to find one needed only 5 minutes to understand how it worked. By the 6th encounter, humans were modifying chromatic weapons to be more effective. They reverse-engineered alien technology during battle, under combat conditions, while being hunted by 50,000 enemy soldiers. Captain Park's people turned the dreadnought's own corridors into a laboratory and classroom. How long did this go on? 18 hours. For 18 hours, chromatic security forces played a deadly game of hide-and-seek with human boarding teams. Every time they cornered a group of humans, they found that their own weapons had been turned against them. Vextal drank from his glass, finally tasting the blue liquid. The humans had figured out how to bypass chromatic shield frequencies. They had learned to operate chromatic computers. They had even cracked the ship's communication codes and were listening to all enemy transmissions. But surely 50,000 chromatics could defeat 137 humans. You would think so. But humans fight differently when they are outnumbered. They become more creative, more desperate, more willing to try impossible tactics. The alien activated another section of his holographic display. Captain Park divided his crew into 13 teams of 10 people each. Each team had a specific mission: weapons, shields, engines, life support, communications, and so on. They were systematically taking over the ship. They were systematically learning the ship. Every system they encountered, they studied and understood and improved. Within 12 hours, humans were operating chromatic technology better than the chromatics themselves. How is that possible? Because humans approach problems differently. When a chromatic encounters a malfunction, they follow standard repair procedures. When a human encounters the same malfunction, they ask why it happened and how to prevent it from happening again. Vextal's 4 eyes all focused on Hyun-woo. Do you understand what this means? In less than 1 day, your species learned technology that took the chromatic empire centuries to develop. What was the turning point in the battle? When the humans reached the ship's main computer core. Captain Park himself led this team, along with his chief engineer and communications officer. They spent 6 hours studying chromatic computer systems. 6 hours? 6 hours to learn everything. The computer languages, the security protocols, the data storage methods, and then they began to reprogram the ship's artificial intelligence. Vextal finished his drink and sat back in his chair. The Death's Edge had an AI system that controlled weapons, navigation, life support, and communications. It was considered unbreachable by enemy forces. But the humans breached it. They did not breach it. They convinced it to join them. Hyun-woo stopped writing. They convinced the enemy AI to switch sides? Captain Park's team studied the AI's programming and discovered that it was designed to protect the ship and crew from all threats. They showed the AI tactical analyses proving that continued fighting would result in the destruction of the dreadnought and the death of everyone aboard. And the AI believed them? The AI ran its own calculations and reached the same conclusion. The human boarding teams had already compromised too many critical systems. Continued resistance would lead to catastrophic system failures. So what did the AI do? It opened all internal doors for the humans. It provided them with detailed maps of the ship. It disabled security systems and redirected power to sections under human control. Vextal signaled for another drink. Within minutes, Captain Park's teams had access to every part of the dreadnought. They moved through the ship like they had built it themselves. What about the chromatic crew? Most of them surrendered without fighting. When they realized that their own ship's systems were working against them, they lost the will to resist. Some tried to reach escape pods, but the AI had sealed those sections on human orders. So the humans captured the entire ship. They captured it, studied it, and improved it. Within 24 hours of the initial ramming attack, the Death's Edge was under complete human control and operating at 150% of its original efficiency. How did they improve it so quickly? Because humans see possibilities where other species see limitations. The chromatics had built their ship to meet specific requirements. Humans looked at the same systems and asked, what else could this do? Vextal's new drink arrived. For example, the dreadnought's shield generators were designed to deflect energy weapons. Humans modified them to also provide cloaking capabilities and enhanced sensor resolution. They turned defensive systems into offensive ones. They turned everything into everything. Navigation computers became hacking tools. Life support systems became psychological warfare devices. Even the ship's food processors were modified to produce chemical compounds for improvised explosives. What happened to Captain Park and his crew? They renamed the ship New Sol and used it to attack other coalition fleets. For 6 months, one captured dreadnought terrorized the entire chromatic empire. Every battle taught the humans more about alien technology. One ship against an entire empire? One ship crewed by humans who refused to accept limitations. By the end of those 6 months, the New Sol had capabilities that no other ship in the galaxy possessed. Vextal drank deeply. But the most disturbing part came later when coalition intelligence analyzed what the humans had learned. What did they find? Captain Park's crew had not just copied chromatic technology. They had understood it completely and begun developing improvements. Within weeks of capturing the dreadnought, they were building new weapons and systems that were beyond anything the Chromatics had imagined. They had surpassed their teachers. They had surpassed civilizations that were thousands of years more advanced than Earth, and they had done it using nothing but determination and the terrifying human ability to learn from any situation. What lesson did the Coalition learn from Wolf 359? That conventional warfare against humans was impossible. No matter how advanced our technology, no matter how overwhelming our numbers, humans would find a way to adapt and overcome. Vextal's scales turned pale again. That was when the Coalition leadership decided to try a different approach. Instead of trying to defeat human bodies, they would try to break human spirits. Psychological warfare. The most sophisticated psychological warfare campaign in galactic history.